and today I'm gonna be talking about how to gain muscle, just things I've learned over time, going to the gym, looking at other people, give tips and tidbits on how to gain muscle. I pretty much broke it up into three kind of tiers, if you want to say that. First, I got nutrition, and then I got recovery, and then I got training. So I'm gonna start with nutrition. Obviously, I feel like nutrition. I mean, if you know me, nutrition is key. Nutrition is highly important. So, but with weight training and just training in general, it's a little bit not really different. It's the same principles, but it's just some key things you kind of want to be aware of. So the first thing I would say is just eating around your training session. Like for me, I eat around like 2 hours. That might seem a little bit long, so I'd probably say 1 to 2 hours before your weight training session and like a post workout meal after. Like, but the thing is, you don't need to barrel into your car and force down a whey protein or plant-based protein shake and be like, oh my gosh, need protein synthesis. Like the protein synthesis window, like it's actually bigger than you think. Obviously you don't want to wait until like the next day to eat your post-workout meal. That's kind of an oxymoron. It's kind of no point to do that. But just I'd probably say like, I mean, because if you go to the gym and then you drive home, like for me, I go to Planet Fitness, so I go to the gym. It's like a 10 to 13 minute drive home. I'd probably eat when I get home, so it's probably like I'll probably be eating within an hour. So realistically, I'd probably say 3 to 5 hours you're good. I wouldn't see a need to like force anything down and like be worried about that. Just make sure you get some type of nutrition in with quality proteins, carbs to replenish glycogen stores after you trained, and some source of fat. But just know the protein synthesis window is way bigger than you think, like way bigger. So, speaking of protein, like I think a lot of people go OD on the protein, like they like eat five protein bars and like 10,000 protein shakes. Like in reality, you need like 1.6 to like 2 grams per kilogram. So let's say you're like around 60 kilograms or 132 pounds, you'd only need 96 grams of protein. I probably say like 96 to like maybe 102, like that range, to like ensure optimal protein levels. Like you don't need, I mean, obviously if you want to eat more protein, it's not going to hurt you. Like people are like, oh, kidney stones and blah. No, eating protein won't give you kidney stone. I mean, unless you just eat, I mean, even then, like it's not realistic. A realistic amount, a realistic portion that people eat won't give you kidney stones or any of that type of issues. But 1.6 grams to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, that's enough to cover your needs, your bases. Kind of talking about that, even though protein is important and it should be, you should have intention with your protein, needs or whatever. You don't want to forget about carbs and fats. Carbs fuels your training sessions and it promotes recovery throughout the day to make sure you're not dragging right after. And then fat will ensure that your hormones, absorption of fat soluble nutrients like vitamin A, D, E, and K, and just your overall health will make sure all of that's straight. So just make sure you hone in on protein, you hit your levels like 1.6 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, like I just said. But also making sure, you're filling in the rest of your calories with carbs and fat to make sure you're supplying yourself with enough energy and making sure your overall health is in check. Thing with protein, like a protein powder isn't required, but I would recommend it because a lot of people don't like eating, if you eat meat, like large servings of meat or however you do it, I would just say it's more convenient, just adding that to maybe a smoothie. Like you see in my recipes, I'll add it like protein powder in all of them. Or you can add it to your yogurt bowl. You can add it to oatmeal. However you do that. Just making sure that you hit your levels and you're consistent with it. But it's definitely not needed. You can definitely get enough protein from Whole Foods, even if you're plant-based. I mean, I can get enough even if I don't I use protein just because I like it and it's convenient, but you definitely don't need it. And speaking of supplements, if you want to supplement, and I would recommend, I think everybody should supplement somewhat, but not OD, but just be aware of it. I think I've recommended this before, but like fish oil or algae oil if you're vegan or vegetarian. Magnesium, vitamin D. If you don't but I mean, if you're in Houston and Texas, it's pretty much summer. You're gonna get OD sun exposure, so I wouldn't really worry about that. And also a multivitamin if you just want that extra nutritional insurance. That's what I call it, just to make sure you're straight. Make sure when you're getting into supplements, they're GMP certified or like third party certified, third party tested. Making sure that you're not getting that that what you call it? What's a good word for that? Just fugazi stuff. Fugazi stuff. I don't know. I thought of that. Just fugazi stuff that isn't really legit. And, the daily value levels they put is inaccurate. And, the weight is off, like stuff like that. Just make sure the company or the brand you go with is official and certified. And then also, I mean, with nutrition, bulking and cutting. Everybody knows about that if you're really in the lifting space or just bodybuilding, space. Bulking can definitely speed up the muscle process, but it's not. It's recommended. Like I would recommend that, like doing a lean bulk, like 250 or 500 calories above your maintenance. Like that's a good idea if you're first starting out and you get those newbie gains or whatever you call it. But it's not needed. Like, cause I'm not bulking right now and I'm still gaining muscle. I mean, if you're eating at maintenance, you're eating enough protein, enough calories to support your training, get enough carbs to fuel your training, enough fats to make sure your hormones are in check, and, your fatty acids are in check, all of that. You can still build muscle if you're training hard. I'm going to get into that in a second. If you're training hard, you're training consistently, and you can recover from your training. But you don't need the bulk. You don't necessarily need to cut. I mean, if you do bulk, you probably will cut because, you want to cut off the excess fat to show your muscle. But it's not needed. But I would recommend if you're on the skinnier side and you need to put on weight, you need to put on like lean mass, I would recommend that. Also, about the supplement thing, the best way to go about it to make sure like you get what you need is getting your blood drawn. It might sound scary. Oh my gosh, needles. Like I ain't gonna lie, I used to be scared of needles, but if you get it drawn, you see, okay, I might be deficient in vitamin B12. I might be deficient in vitamin D. I might need more omega-3s in my diet. It just gives you like kind of popping the hood under the trunk or whatever you call it, like just seeing what's going on and knowing exactly what you need and what you don't need. Because I mean, you can't over supplement, especially with vitamin A and the fat soluble vitamins. You can OD on that, and then it can give you some problems in the long term. But that's pretty much it for nutrition. I'm gonna go into recovery. Obviously, this falls into recovery. Sleep, I would say 7 to 9 is a good range, but for teens, I've heard like 8 to 10. You can kind of look into that, but 8 to 10 for teens, that's a better range. More realistic, I'd say 7 to 9. Just try and make sure you have a good circadian rhythm and make sure you have somewhat consistent sleep and wake times. I mean, if you're going to bed at like 10 one night, the next night you go to bed at 12, the next night you go to bed at like 3, next night you go to bed at 8 p.m. I mean, that's off, and then you're waking up at 5, and then you wake up at 7, then 10. Your circadian rhythm's thrown off. So just make sure it's consistent as possible, because your body's gonna get used to and adapt to over time. And the thing is, though, I want to preface this: there will be some nights, like let's say you have a wedding or like an event you go to, and you're with family or whatever, and you might go to bed because normally I probably go to bed at like 9 on average. I wake up at 5 every morning. So let's say I go to an event, I don't get home until 11, I gotta cook, and I don't go to bed until 12. You still want to wake up at 5, because if you just delay your sleep, that's gonna mess up your little rhythm. Like I've done it before. I pushed back my sleep, but I realized if you just keep the, wake time consistent, that one night of sleep won't do anything in the long term. And yeah, like I said, sleep pattern disruptions are normal and expected. Just control the controllables and stay consistent with your sleep and wake time as best as possible. Then the next thing, just managing stress, daily stressors, like let's say if you work, maybe there's more customers than usual. Maybe you have a big test coming up and you need to study all night, so you're stressed. You're like, oh my gosh, I gotta study. And then maybe just family issues, just trying to, like I say, control the controllables, show up for your training, stay consistent with your nutrition, control that, and, just try to stay relaxed. Obviously stress is normal, but try not to let that, freak you out and take you out of what you got going on. And then also with recovery, your training split, make sure that it meets your recovery needs. So let's say like you wouldn't want to do chest, didn't throw legs in. You just did chest back to back to back, and you're not letting your chest recover. You know what I mean? So like picking a split that splits up overlapping muscle groups like chest and shoulders. You probably wouldn't want to train chest and then train shoulders right after that, because I mean they're both pushing movements, and your shoulders are right here. Your chest are like a lot of chest movements involve the shoulders. So you would want to separate those overlapping muscle groups throughout the week. So like example, this is my split I'm reading off. So I do shoulders and arms, legs. I have 1 day of rest in between, chest and back, one weight Dang, words are hard. 1 day of rest in between that, and then chest, back, biceps, and core, and then shoulders, legs, and triceps. I really just changed up core. I realize if I do it 2 times a week, it'll probably give me a bigger bang for my buck. I'll kind of get into that with the sets and stuff, but yeah, just making sure you split it up to make sure you can recover in between them, and maybe have rest days in between those. And now, this is the main thing: training. I'm gonna get into training. Main thing I can hone in with training: make sure you train close to failure, if not all the way to failure. But I mean, obviously, I like training to failure most of my sets, but for most people, I wouldn't recommend that, because if you train to failure, let's say you have 4 to 5 sets. If you train to failure on all of those sets, you'll probably get more fatigued, and your exertion level will go down because you're more fatigued. So I wouldn't recommend that if you do more sets. If you do like 1 to maybe even 3 sets, you could take all of those to failure and be okay. Especially if you do 1 to 2 sets, I would take those to failure for sure. Because I mean, you have little room for error, so I would go all out on those. But if you have 3, I'd probably go to like 0 reps in reserve, 1 rep left in reserve, stuff like that, or RPE. Same thing as reps in reserve. It's just like basically how hard is that on a scale of 1 to 10. That's basically what RPE is, and RIR, or reps in reserve. That's okay. How many reps did I have left in the tank? That's pretty much what it is. And in terms of how many times a week to train, in terms of weight training, I would probably say 3 to 6 days is pretty good. Obviously it's been shown that training muscle groups 2 times at least per week is the best in terms of muscle growth. But I've done 3 days. Obviously the other 2 days were at the school gym, but 3 days, and if you keep coming in and your lifts are progressing, you're building muscle, you're progressing. So you want to stick with that. If you can come in and add a rep or add 5 to 10 to 15 pounds on a weight, you're making progression. So that's obviously working. So as long as you can stay consistent with that, and the main thing is progressive overload. That's literally the main thing with lifting. If you can progress session to session, you've obviously built enough muscle to push that movement further in terms of weight, reps, or like tempo, or however you progress. And then speaking of that, tracking your lifts, like, you don't know if you progress or not if you didn't track it. I mean, because for me, I use my phone. I'm on a notes app right now, but I use the notes app. So I put like I'll put a screenshot on the screen right there. But I'll put a screenshot, and basically, like, for example, shoulders and arms, day 1. And I put the lift I'm doing. And then I put what I did last set. Well, I'd start with my warm-up sets. I put like, okay, 50 pounds, 2 to 3. And then I'm going to just say this. Warm-up sets don't have to be OD. Like, you could do, for the first warm-up set, I'll do 50% of my working weight. And then the second warm-up set, I'll do 75% of my working weight. So I do like 2 to 3 reps for the first set, warm-up set. And then the second one, I do 2 to 3 reps for that warm-up set. And then I go into my working weight in my working sets. So, yeah, basically I'll put shoulders and arms, the workout I'm doing, my warm-up sets, then my working sets. Okay, how many did I get last session? I'll put that in there so I know I can have the intent to be, okay, I want to aim for 6 reps. Last time I got 5. Or I want to aim for 7 because last time I got, just basically aim for more reps or adding more weight progressively. So if you use a notebook, your notes app, I don't know, a different app that's in the App Store or Google Play Store, if it helps you track your lifts over time and see what you did, or you could use a Google Excel sheet if you really want to get down like to the nitty gritty. I mean, obviously you're not going to take a laptop to the gym. I mean, you can, but I mean, a phone's pretty much easier than that. So I would just use your notes app or like any other way of tracking to make sure you're straight. Because I mean, if you don't know what you did last time, how are you going to progress? Because you don't know. And then also, I just want to, because a lot of people think, if I lift, I can't run. Or if I lift, I can't hoop. If I lift, well, football and lifting is pretty much like hand in hand. Like, if you think of football, you think of heavy lifting. But I'm just saying, like, with cardio, like running, rowing, any form of cardio, people think, well, the whole hybrid athlete thing that's coming about, people are now starting to understand that you can run and lift at the same time and still build muscle. But the thing is, since cardio burns more calories than lifting, they think that, I'm going to be burning all my muscle and I'm going to be a twig or whatever. I mean, if calories are accounted for, if you're at maintenance or at a slight surplus, you're going to build muscle. If you're in a calorie deficit, you're gonna lose muscle. You're gonna lose weight too. So I mean, just making sure that your nutrition is dialed in. If your nutrition is dialed in, you're getting enough calories, protein, carbs to fuel your running and lifting if you do both, and fats just for overall health. You'll be straight and you'll build muscle. If you're in a calorie deficit, it won't happen. If you're at maintenance or in a surplus, it will happen. You'll be straight. So just making sure, especially, I mean, if you're running and lifting, you need the fuel to make sure you recover so you can show up for both of those training sessions in the same day. So just making sure you're eating enough. You won't turn into a twig. You won't burn away. You'll be fine. So just make sure you eat enough and you train hard and you train consistently and you track your lifts. That's pretty much the main thing I'm trying to get at with that. And then for beginners, I would center your workouts like around compound exercise like squats, deadlifts. I would probably recommend like a RDL for your hamstrings. For me, I do like a lot of Smith machine squats. I'd recommend machine presses, but if you like bench or Smith machine bench, do that. Like the thing is with training, I think like it was either this dude named Layne Norton or Jeff Nippard. One of them. They're like, you want to do lifts that you like, but that literature has been proven to be effective. Because like one exercise that I see a lot of people do, they get a plate and they're like pressing. Like if I find a video of it, I'll put it right there. But you're pressing like horizontally. You feel something, but it's not really working the muscle. It's not doing anything. So making sure you pick exercises that have been proven to have some effect and that aren't useless and wasting your time, but pick things that you will do. Because if you don't like doing it, guess what? You're not going to do it in the long run. So making sure that you like exercise, but it's not bogus and BS. Because, you don't want to be in a gym for an hour to 2 hours doing BS exercises that you could have picked something even better that you would have liked even more, that you could have stayed even more consistent with. You get what I mean? Like, just pick things that haven't proven the work that you like, And also I just want to preface this: isolation exercises don't need to be trained at 12 to 20 reps if you don't want. Like if you want to do that, cool. If you can stay consistent and you log your progress, do that. But I'm just saying, for me, with leg extensions, for example, I train 5 to 8 reps and I train the failure. That's how I do it. If you want to train higher reps, cool. But reps, I watched this Instagram story, dude named Sean. I'm not gonna say his last name, so I might butcher it. But basically, he was doing chest press at 4 reps, and he was like, it was good for hypertrophy. I can't prove that. I don't really have evidence for that, but I would assume, in my opinion, I think anything as low as 4 to 5 reps that can still produce muscle growth. In my opinion, someone can prove me wrong. But in my opinion, I think that's cool. But when you get to 1, 2, and 3, obviously that's been proven time and time again. That's more for strength and powerlifting and power building. So if you want to incorporate that for strength, which is a good idea, that's cool. But if you're talking about actual muscle hypertrophy, the safest bet is 5 to 15, 20 reps. That's cool. But most of your reps should probably be in the 6. Well, the 6 to 12 has kind of been debunked, but it's actually pretty good for hypertrophy. So 6 to 12, 8 to 12, that range is pretty golden. But for me, I would say 5 to 15. That's kind of where I train at. 5 to 20. That's a good gauge if you want to, worry about that. But speaking of volume and ranges, a good range for volume. So obviously your volume needs to be your volume needs to be there when you're training. I'd probably say 10 to 20 sets per week. But if you want to train with lower volume, 8 to 10, because you can build muscle off of 4 sets a week. Is that optimal? No, but you can. So the thing is, if you're going to train lower sets per week, your intensity, if you train 4 sets a week, for example, all of those sets have to be the failure. Let's say you train 4 sets for your chest, 4 sets for your legs, 4 sets for your back, blah, blah, blah. You get the point. 4 sets per week per muscle group. All of those sets need to be the failure because the volume's not equated for, so the intensity needs to equate for the loss of volume. So just making sure that if you want to train with lower volume than not 8 to 10, it's 10 to 20 sets per week. That's this has been proven time and time again to be good for most people. Make sure that the intensity is adjusted to equate for the loss of volume. And then also, I kind of already mentioned it, the rep range of 5 to 20 is a good gauge. 1 to 4, even 1 to 3 is like more strength focused, and 6 to 30 plus is like definitely more hypertrophy focused. So, but I personally, like I kind of said, I train like in the 5 to 15, 5 to 12 rep range. Main thing, obviously, consistency. If you log your lifts, you progressively overload is, but because some nights, you might have slept a little bit less, you might have ate a little bit less, you might have had less carbs, you might have had, less water, less electrolytes. That can definitely change and fluctuate, your lifts, and definitely depending on like if you run in the morning, because like last week, this is a perfect example. I had my run in the morning. I did this thing called the Murph workout, and then I went and did shoulders and arms, and my lifts decreased. A lot of them decreased, and it's definitely from the fatigue I did from those 2 cardio-based workouts. Well, the Murph has strength and pull-ups and blah, blah, blah. If you want to know what the Murph is, I'll put it right there, obviously, and show you what it is. But definitely, if you run to the fatigue from that can carry over and decrease your progressions in your lifts. But just making sure that you try and stay consistent as possible, and you log your lifts. You see, okay, what did I do last week or last session, and then you try and beat that, or you add more weight, or you do more time under tension. You do 3 seconds, in the eccentric, or I think it's eccentric, and instead of 2 you did last time. But I'm gonna just leave you off some good resources and just some extra tips. Good resources are Max Euceda, Max Taylor Lifts, Casey Kelly, Renaissance Periodization, and Jeff Nippard. These guys, they give pretty good advice. A lot of them have taught me some good tidbits on how to lift, because when I first started, I ain't gonna lie, I didn't know. I never really knew like progressive overload. I never really knew how to build muscle, and I just thought if you lift in a certain rep range, you'd build muscle. But I learned that you have to train close to failure or to failure, and you have to, track your lifts so you know what you did last time. And I just want to let y'all know, just endure the process. Muscle building is a very slow process, and just keep showing up and you'll build muscle over time. But that was episode 17 of the Indigo Podcast, and I'll see y'all next time.